Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Explainer. Today we're diving into a deeply fascinating, though admittedly pretty dark, slice of history. We're essentially going to map the DNA of the modern Russian security apparatus, and what the historical records and declassified documents reveal is a really chilling reality. You see, the deeply entrenched system of secret policing that we usually associate with the Soviet Union and beyond, well, it was actually born from the very autocracy it eventually helped overthrow.
So, I want you to think about this for a second. What happens when a regime builds a weapon it simply cannot control? It's a compelling hook, right? We're going to explore exactly how the Tsarist secret police constructed this monstrous intelligence machine that not only outlived the Tsar himself, but was actually eagerly adopted by the very revolutionaries who destroyed him.
Okay, let's dive into this. The organization at the center of our explainer today is the Okhrana, which literally translates to the Guard. Officially, they were known as the Department for the Protection of Public Safety and Order, operating as the secret police force of the Russian Empire from 1881 to 1917. Their core mission was singular, and it was absolute: protect the Tsar and defend the autocracy from a rising tide of revolutionaries.
If you look at the evolution of Russian secret policing, it's basically a rapid, unbroken relay race of power. We start off with the third section back in 1826, but the direct lineage really passes from the Tsarist Okhrana in 1881 straight into the hands of the Soviet Cheka in 1917, eventually evolving into the infamous KGB in 1954, and right up to the modern FSB in 1995. The names change, the regimes change, but the institutional framework of state security, it just marches right on.
Section 1. The birth of the Okhrana and the tradecraft of terror.
Picture this. It's 1881, and the atmosphere in Russia is incredibly tense. I mean, we're talking shadowy and menacing. The actual catalyst for the Okhrana's creation was the brutal assassination of Tsar Alexander II. The previous security apparatus, that third section we just mentioned, had utterly failed to stop his murder. So, the new Tsar, Alexander III, needed a vastly superior shield. What began simply as an elite security detail for the royal family rapidly metastasized. It turned into a sprawling, empire-wide campaign designed to absolutely crush revolutionaries, terrorists, and really any dissent against the autocracy.
According to declassified CIA historical files, the Okhrana's operations evolved through three very distinct phases. Phase 1 was basic external surveillance, essentially just hiring local detectives to follow targets around. But they quickly realized that wasn't going to be enough to stop underground terror plots. So they escalated to Phase 2, internal penetration. This is where they began turning real revolutionaries into double agents deep inside these subversive groups. And finally, they moved to Phase 3, utilizing agents provocateurs. These were operatives who actually organized and participated in revolutionary acts just to flush out the dissenters.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how these declassified CIA files, which document the Okhrana's Foreign Bureau in Paris, reveal a highly sophisticated transition. They weren't just doing standard police work anymore. They were pioneering modern espionage. They developed rudimentary tradecraft for meeting and debriefing secret collaborators in safe houses, effectively turning police work into classic, deep-cover intelligence operations across Europe.
And their tradecraft was honestly as innovative as it was ruthless. They used something called perulustration in what they termed black chambers. This was essentially intercepting mail, using special machines to open envelopes without a trace, and washing out invisible ink. When revolutionaries started using codes, Okhrana cryptographers stepped up and developed complex ciphers based on biblical scripture. They embraced brand new technologies too, like photography and fingerprinting. But alongside all this modernization, they maintained a truly brutal grip, operating torture chambers in major urban centers, places like Warsaw, Riga, and Odessa, using arbitrary arrest and unimaginable suffering to extract information and maintain control.
And this brings us to a truly mind-blowing detail about the Okhrana's real power. Just think about the number 49. Before 1914, historical archives reveal that the Okhrana had merely 49 employees spread across 7 offices. That's it. They commanded less than 10% of the total police budget. Yet the revolutionary underground was absolutely paralyzed by paranoia. They genuinely believed the empire was infested with tens of thousands of spies. The Okhrana's terrifying psychological footprint vastly outweighed their actual physical size.
Section 2. Forgeries and Provocateurs.
The Okhrana's ultimate goal was to sow division and hatred, basically to distract the public from trying to overthrow the Tsar. And this psychological warfare reached the absolute highest levels of the empire. Tsar Nicholas II himself chillingly endorsed the infamous text, The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Believing the text to be completely real, the Tsar used it to justify horrific anti-Semitic policies. But the actual truth about this document reveals the Okhrana's sheer willingness to engineer pure, state-sponsored hatred.
The historical consensus, which was actually first exposed by the Times way back in 1921 and confirmed by tons of later research, is that the Protocols was a complete forgery created specifically for the Okhrana. It was plagiarized by an Okhrana agent from an obscure 1865 French pamphlet. And get this, that original pamphlet criticized Napoleon III and never even mentioned Jewish people. The Okhrana literally fabricated a worldwide conspiracy out of thin air, just to create a scapegoat for Russia's domestic troubles.
Section 3. The Monster Turns. Police Socialism.
Now, in a profound bit of historical irony, the Okhrana's tactics actually ended up fueling the exact revolution they were trying to prevent. A chief named Sergei Zubitov introduced this concept called police socialism. The idea was to create fake Okhrana-controlled trade unions to basically mollify factory workers with minor improvements, keeping them away from any genuine revolutionary movements. But wow, did this backfire disastrously. In 1905, an Okhrana agent named Father Gapon led a police-sponsored workers' group in a massive demonstration to the Winter Palace. The military, who were completely unaware of the Okhrana scheme, opened fire on the crowd. This became known as the Bloody Sunday Massacre, a seminal event that entirely shattered the Tsar's image and massively accelerated the monarchy's ultimate collapse.
Section 4. The KGB and FSB Legacy. So when the Tsarist regime finally fell to the Bolsheviks in 1917, the revolutionaries simply inherited the very system that had oppressed them for decades. So the crucial point is comparing these two sides to really show the unbroken patrimony between Tsarist repression and the methods adopted by the Cheka, the NKVD, and the KGB. The Okhrana's parlustration became the Stasi and KGB's black chambers. The Tsarist use of agent provocateurs became standard Soviet deep penetration. Even things like mandatory passports and the systemic registration of politically suspect persons, that began with the Okhrana, not the Soviet intelligence agencies. The Bolsheviks just took it and made it more efficient.
Let's see how this builds over time. Declassified CIA analysis absolutely confirms this continuity. The Soviet services focused heavily on the exact same targets as their Tsarist predecessors: emigre groups, revolutionaries abroad, and internal dissenters. Their foreign operations were, just like the Okhrana's, a direct extension of their domestic security mission. The playbook didn't change at all. Literally, only the flag flying above the headquarters did. And this matters because it clearly illustrates how a vast state security apparatus can become a self-sustaining entity, totally detached from the original ideology of the ruling government.
To put it in perspective, the Cheka replaced the Okhrana in December 1917, and the Bolsheviks immediately began utilizing Okhrana cryptanalysis and signals intelligence. Even more staggering, former KGB officers like Oleg Kalugin and Oleg Gordievsky later confirmed that KGB trainees were still reading Tsarist Okhrana manuals in their lecture courses well into the 1980s. The revolutionaries were studying the secret police of the Tsar to perfect the dark arts of their former enemy. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. If governments collapse, if monarchs are executed, and entire empires fall, but the exact same secret police tactics, the black chambers, the provocateurs, the psychological warfare, endure for well over a century, who is really in control? The name shifted from Okhrana to Cheka to KGB to FSB, but the tradecraft of terror proved chillingly immortal. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this deep dive has given you a powerful new lens on history. See you next time.